I think Bob Ross coined the phrase, "There are no mistakes, just happy accidents," which couldn't be more fitting for the topic of this week's video, all about Lightroom's happy accident that I suppose could have been a mistake, or perhaps this is something that Adobe secretly planned all along. And not only does this tool have a secret use case, but it also has multiple different ways it can be applied that I believe were not part of the original implementation plan. So to jump right into it, and the feature I'm referring to here is the Dehaze tool, which of course is meant to remove atmospheric haze from a photo, which ironically I find is the thing that it does the most poorly. So this is a great example from my recent trip to Bali. A lot of fog right through here, very hazy atmosphere. If we come down to the basics section and we bring up Dehaze, you can see what that is doing. And it just, when you use positive dehaze in a very, I should say subtle manner like this right here, I think it does an okay job. But the more you push it, the weirder things get. You just get a lot of different color casting, a lot of artifacts. It just starts to look a little bit odd. And ironically, that is the way that I use dehaze the least. I almost never, ever use dehaze to the right or in the positive manner. I'm always going left in the negative manner. So as I swing this back and forth, you can see what is happening here. And I think that going negative on dehaze is an amazing way to do a couple of different things. And I'll go into each one of these, I guess, real benefits, or the things that I use negative dehaze for the most. So for this instance right here, this photograph, you can see that there was already beautiful atmosphere in the background, beautiful light coming through the background to the foreground. If I come up here to filters, linear gradient, I'm going to make the image a little bit smaller on my screen, and I'm just going to draw a linear gradient right across this area here. Let's go back to fit. And if I come over here and let's go to dehaze and start to bring this down, look what that does. That just really amplifies that fog in the background. And what's really neat is, like, I have it at -50 right now, which -50 on dehaze, whether you're going -50 or +50, that's a big adjustment for dehaze. But what's really cool is I think going negative on dehaze is a much more subtle effect as opposed to going positive on dehaze. And I'll show you what I mean right here. So -50 on dehaze, and if I toggle this on and off, before and after, and you can see it just really brought back, or even just added more to that beautiful fog in the background. And what's even cooler is you can come up here to color, you come over here to temperature, and you can really warm up that area in the background. You can kind of cool it down a little bit as well. Totally up to you. But using a linear gradient whenever there is any kind of fog present is a great way. And I shouldn't say linear gradient. You could do this with a radial filter as well. But whenever there's any kind of foggy atmosphere or hazy atmosphere, and you want to make it even foggier or hazier, using a local mask or in a local adjustment of using negative dehaze is a great way to emphasize that even further. It's also great for softening a photograph. Now, I do this on just about every single one of my photographs. Let me just close this down and go over here to this photograph. As you can see in this image, this is an older photograph. Maybe 5 autumns ago. But there's literally no atmosphere in this photograph whatsoever. But if I come over here to dehaze and I just start to bring this down a little bit, you can see that just kind of softens things down a little bit, just a touch. And I will usually go -10, maybe -15 on dehaze on just about every photograph, not to create atmosphere, just to kind of soften things down just a little bit. And if I toggle this on and off, so this is before and after, it is so subtle. I usually will do that in conjunction with -20 on clarity, maybe it's a little bit of positive texture. And I think that combination there just really softens things down a little bit. While I'm talking about softening things down, this is the other thing I almost always do, is I'll bring this output to about 15, 16 and just add a little bit of contrast while I'm also kind of just fading that black point just a little bit. And that just softens down the black point in the photograph. So as I toggle this on and off, you can see what that has done. And if I toggle the entire edit on and off, you can just see how those couple tweaks just soften down the overall photograph. And I mention this all the time in photos or in videos, where I find that digital photographs sometimes look a little bit too digital. And in my taste, or from, I guess, what makes it look digital to me versus film, is that the true black point, the deepness of the black point in the digital photos, sometimes is just so deep and it's just so dark. and it just kind of just makes the photo look a little bit lifeless, a little digital. But just by fading that black point a little bit and just softening down the details in the scene is a great way to just kind of just soften the photograph up and make it, not necessarily make it look more like film. I just think it makes it look less like digital. It's kind of the same thing, but maybe just a different way to put it. But for this particular image, there is no fog, there is no atmosphere in the background here. So if I come down here, I'm gonna bring these highlights down just a touch because that's bugging me some. If I come up here and let's do a radial gradient. And I come up here to the top and let's draw a big radius across this area right through here. I'm gonna actually make the photograph a little bit smaller on my screen just so I can make this radius even larger. So something like this maybe, up through there, maybe even bring it down a touch. I think something like that looks good. Let's go back to fit. And let's go to dehaze now. Now we're gonna add negative dehaze once again. Positive dehaze would be that way. We're gonna go negative. And you can see what that is doing. And I toggle this on and off. This is just the dehaze. It just softens things down in the background there. And I think that's a great technique for areas in a background of a photograph, especially waterfalls, because waterfalls naturally kind of kick up waterfall spray. So a lot of times there is some kind of atmosphere back there. Sometimes you might notice it when you're on location with your naked eye, but when you capture it, it gets kind of like lost in translation. You really can't see it. But by using negative dehaze, it's a great way to just kind of soften down the atmosphere of a photograph just a touch. And I'm kind of overdoing it a little bit just so you can see it at home. But as I toggle this on and off, you can see what that is really doing to the background there. And you can do it throughout the entire photograph too. It doesn't have to just be the background. You can do it anywhere you want. And if I toggle the entire edit on and off now, before, after, and right here, there's just no atmosphere. This to me looks like very much like a digital photograph. This right here looks like it's got a little bit of atmosphere. It's got a little bit of haze there. So totally, totally different. I want to go back to that first drone photo because I do want to mention real quick a couple things that if you do like to use positive dehaze, I think it's okay when you use it in a very subtle manner. And so if I come over here to dehaze, and for whatever reason, if I wanted to remove the haze from this, or the fog from this photograph, which I wouldn't want to, it's one of my favorite aspects of the scene. But if I would want to, I think something you just want to be careful of is the more dehaze you add to a photograph, the more contrast you're adding to that scene. So you might have to go back and reduce the amount of contrast you had added. It also really, really saturates colors. So if I were to come up here and push this dehaze up quite a bit, I probably want to come back and reduce the contrast a touch, maybe even bring down the saturation a little bit just to kind of counteract that dehaze a little bit as well. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if you do want to use positive dehaze, just be careful or just pay attention to how saturated the colors are becoming and how much contrast you're getting put into, or how much contrast is being added to your photograph, because dehaze really, really pumps up the contrast in a photograph. So just a couple of quick things to be aware of. But as I mentioned to kick this video off, I very rarely, like 99% of the time, never ever use positive dehaze. It's always going the other way. So many photographers I know also do the same exact thing, which kind of got me thinking, I wonder if Adobe even had that as part of their plan. I kind of think they did, because why else would they have put a negative side to that slider? It would only be positive. But I think negative dehaze has so many different use cases, just from exaggerating atmosphere that happens to be in a photograph, or maybe even adding a little bit of atmosphere that probably doesn't really even exist in a photograph, and also just softening down the image as well. Those are 3 use cases that I think are absolutely fantastic for using negative dehaze, and I hope it's something that you might find interesting as well, something you might want to test out on your photographs moving forward. So a real quick video this week, but I wanted to get that out there. It's been something that's been on my mind for a while, because it's a technique that I use constantly, but I've never actually made a dedicated video to it. So it's kind of a quick tip this week. If you have any questions about the dehaze tool, please leave those in the comment section below, and I will get back in touch with you as quickly as humanly possible. And if you enjoyed this week's video, if you could, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And as always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend it with me here today, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.